Hey everybody, Adam from The Army Painter here. If you remember when we launched the new Gamemaster terrain kits, we had a little challenge at HQ between our two founders, Bo and Jonas. Bo was to create a full table worth of terrain for competitive wargaming, while Jonas, on the other hand, was to build a full table of terrain with a more narrative theme. Each of them received a Gamemaster terrain kit. Bo received an additional $10 to buy extra supplies, where Jonas, because he was building a narrative terrain table, he received $20. The goal for each of our contestants was to build a full tabletop worth of gaming terrain in 48 hours. We had lots of footage from that day. We wanted to go back and revisit it because there's some really cool techniques and tricks that they got to show off. So let's take a look at Bo's competitive terrain building challenge.
Right, now I'm ready for the challenge. One competitive 40k table coming up. I've got my XPS foam booster packs, 2 of these, experimental size glue, love it. What I bought, disgusting slime and some stuff. I got the nice brushes, the hot wire foam cutter, essential tool for this one, batteries, my household items, toothpicks. I've got flags, not because I'm that patriotic, but because they are round and can look like pipes. And most importantly, I've got the set. That will give me the primer, tufts, static grass as I showed before, and then the different colors in, biggie and razor wire. Basically, that should all be what I need. Game on. One more container. Working on the next few. I'm gonna measure quite a lot because in order to make it internationally competitive table, so you can use it everywhere in the world, there are some dimensions I need to adhere to. So I've got the big ruins having certain sizes, the 2-story ruins, the difficult terrain, the forests, the containers, so on. All needs different specific measurements, and they all need to be the same because I need to mirror it. So I'm going to start and spend the next 2 hours probably measuring, cutting out, and then I'm going to do all the fun stuff. Because I don't have unlimited amount of XPS foam and I need to have exact measures, I've cut out the first walls of this 3-story building, 9.5 inches tall, and now I need to make sure I got a side on it, and I've get every 3 inches up, every story basically, I get 2 inches out to position the miniature so they can shoot out. Now the XPS foam size of it is actually correct. So I've got what I've got left here is 2 inches exactly, forming the perfect base for my ruins. I'd love to say that was deliberate. Let's just say that it was, saving me a lot of foam, making sure I can use one plate A3 for each 3-story building. What I'm faced with here is a math problem that I can't solve in my head, but that's not saying much. What I'm trying to do is see if I can make one sheet fit into a 3-story building, as I kind of promised I could before. So I'm trying to measure in roughly what that would look like. Missing some stuff over here. Maybe a grenade hit that area, could give me some more. Yeah. I'll look into it. Maybe I got some spares from else. Back to the drawing board. And now you ask what the toothpicks were for. to pin it in place. Like that. And like that. Boom. Excellent. Right, now I made my first 3-story building. Roughly as it's going to look. Obviously it's going to have a lot of effects on it, which is going to be the exciting part, but first I'm just going to build them. Remember all the time to be mirrored. Now what I do is that I know that each story is going to be 3 inches high, so I'm going to measure 3 inches and then half, because that's about the size of the foam, thickness of the foam, up to here. Meaning I've got this area in here. I need holes in it. Obviously you can make sort of the Arctic, or how do you say that? The bows that you see in the 40k terrain, sort of the old Gothic architecture. But in this case, I don't want to spend time on that. I just need holes like I've done with this one. And how I do it is quite simple. I smash it. This is the lovely part of it. I'm just going to draw this first. This is going to be Jonas with a smile on. Let's see if he smiles in a minute. I love it. Now, who knew that making terrain would be this funny? You take this one, punch a hole in, then you use your fingers. Simply just press it out what you've just smashed, and all the leftovers you get, you put in a pile. And then once you have a last pile, you have enough for your difficult terrain, which we're going to make later. Looking like rubble and debris and what have you. So, continuously remember that the line, or it's going to be here, the base, miniatures have to shoot out. Always on the other side. So, and this is going to make some effects here on this side. Big sort of shrapnel impact, and obviously the fun stuff. You would imagine a space marine, or even better, guardsman being here. And then you've got bullet holes. And since I've got the glistening blood, what's going to happen is that I'm going to have a spray of blood as the burst of shrapnel just came in and hit him in the face. Looking like that. I'm gonna shoot you! I'm sure you're all aware by now how you glue, so that's not going to invent the wheel here, but there is a certain trick to it, and as you saw as I was raiding the kitchen in the beginning, my trick is to use toothpicks. I do use toothpick for certain thing, same compartment too, basically just to pin the whole piece in, so I can keep working fast on each one. When they stick out like that, as they do here, simply just cut them in like that, like this, just beneath here, third part, and then on to making it look really cool by cutting up here. Klar?
Yep. Du kører bare.
Right, the containers. I need to make those from bottles, as I said. What I've done is I've taken 2 squares, 8 by 8 centimeters. That's the good thing about this one, it's got inches and centimeters. In inches that is 3.2 inches, but I suppose whether it's 3 or not doesn't really matter as long as they're all the same size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bottle, see where to put the glue, roughly like that here in the middle, turn around, roughly in there, good. Then I'm going to cut the corners. I'm not going to measure this. Give it an H shape to make it look a little bit more industrial. I don't know why that makes it look industrial, but I kind of imagine that it does. Right, all of these go into my pile I will use for rocks and rubble later. Right, now I've got these two. They are obviously going to be battered on the outside because it's the 41st millennium and everything is smashed up. Whoops, other side. Like that. Lots of texture on it, will look cool. In order to make sure that the spray is going to stick to it, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a rubbing, like this. Removing the gloss off the can. Then, the edges. Like that. And then we need something like bullet hole. You just smash it up a little bit. Now here, careful you don't cut yourself, but that will look, I think, to give it just a little bit of texture in. I'm using a simple screwdriver here. Like that. Give it some texture. Take it out to a cylinder form again. Like that. Then you've already measured where to put the super glue, or PVA. In the circle, just follow the circle that you made. I'm thinking if speed making scenery had a name, something, this would be it. Make sure it's glue everywhere, make sure it's aligned so it can stand. Like that. How do you want the bottle turned? Like this. Voila, done. Area terrain, difficult terrain, is also something you use on competitive gaming. Now, on the table from WTC, I saw there was a lot of those, round 9-inch diameter. I just cannot make myself make something that is completely square or round when I have to put it down. So I'm going to make it as terrain, but I've cut these plates out now, and they are 9 inches by 6 inches. Now, as long as they're both the same and goes opposite each other, it's not a problem. For this, I'm going to use the foam cutter. And I'm basically just going to cut out shapes. If you can see how I'm going back and forth like that. Simply to cut faster, not to pull any. Back to one side. It's obviously going to be roughly square, but not as square, and in the game I am absolutely certain this does not give an advantage to any player at all, whether I cut it 0.5 millimeter more to one side or the other. As you can see, it's still very square, it just looks a little bit more alive, so to speak. Again, there are no rules for this. It's just to make it look good. Now I have the chance to actually make it look more than just square and still keep in line with competitive terrain. See how I go in on an angle here? So the base is going to be towards, and up here you're going to see all the different textures. Finish like that. Right. Now I imagine difficult terrain will be something that didn't look cool. I'm just gonna make it look a little bit better. Like that. Be something where you can position your models, but still it needs to be some terrain. So this will be one of those where if I just flog it with terrain and razor wire, you won't be actually able to use it competitively, which is a shame. So I've got all this cut out, and I'm basically just going to put some glue on in a second and just make it maybe like that. Put in some of my toothpicks to go out in a circle, put some razor wire in between, some sand on it, and I'm sure that will do well for difficult terrain. Now that I've glued on the bigger pieces, I still got some wet PVA on it, and to give it some of that texture, I'm just gonna put some of that brown battle basing on here, battleground, and it will make it look good as well. Now that's done, giving me an idea about what it will look like, and then I'm gonna take my toothpicks. And I think there's been guardsmen here trying to hold on. Maybe from the Eldar. No, they're not that good right now, but they will be. Once the codex comes out. And between these I'm going to put some razor wire. So basically this is sort of a Custer's Last Stand, 40k style. Not too many, because we still need to put miniatures in there, but right now this will give the idea about somebody having put up a defensible position. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this piece of fairly boring scenery a bit more exciting. I'm going to use the XPS foam cutter, and what's going to happen is that now we've got the mid-level where you can shoot out. I've got a Chaos Obliterator here, and he's going to be able to shoot out from here too. Maybe not everywhere, but at least a few points. So I'm going to cut down now the top level with my cutter to about this height first. The reason why I cut it too high now is that it's easier to cut again than it is if I cut too much in one go. Obviously, same as going to the hairdressers, which a lot of us right now might want to do. Now again, I'm not just making sure that it has a certain level, and then I start measuring. Right now he can't see, so now I'm going to do not this direction. I'm going to angle it 45 degrees. Right, like that. And from the other side, cutting it down to size. Slowly moving it back and forth to have some speed on it. Like that. Now we can more or less see over. I'd say that would count in a game. Obviously you need to agree with your opponent before what you can see and what you can't see. But I'm just going to cut it a little bit further down to make sure that we are not in doubt whether this guy can shoot or not. That means that even a lowly guardsman now should be able to pour in some fire on the enemy. Like that, and maybe cutting a bit more here would be sufficient. Good. And see how I cut it from both sides, so I cut it like that to give it some spike up. It just simply looks better when I start painting it. There you go. 3 or 4 people can shoot. People, models. Tyranid is not really people, is it? cut them now with the foam cutter here, all the edges, and they look fairly sharp. And in order to make it look coherent with the rest of the buildings, I'm now going to take a smaller rock, one of Jonas's smaller things, as they say, and I'm just going to sort of put some texture on the top here, because if I don't do that, it'll look very much like somebody cut a ruin with a sharp tool, and not as a ruin itself. The illusion will break, so to speak. And it will break because the rest of my ruin has been beaten down with a rock pretty hard, so it will just not look coherent. That's why I'm trying to make small bends in, so when I dry brush it tomorrow, it's simply just going to look better. And I think that's what we want to achieve. Simplicity, but also if we with simple methods can make it look better than it would normally, then obviously that's what we're going to do. Like that. Now the ruin has been battered into pulp to look like a proper 40k ruin. Now I'm going to do the last bit before I'll spray paint it tomorrow, which is I'm going to add some of that sand I bought, the brown battleground. And obviously I'm going to do that with glue and brush, simply to have more control. Right, basically I'm going to put it in with all the recesses. Now I haven't been cutting exactly, so in order to hide that, obviously, I'm just going to fill it up with rocks and sand, which is always a good way to hide if you have any. I suppose hide in sand, I don't know. No, it's a long day. Basically it looks like this when I then start to apply it. Like that in here. And that I'm going to do for the entire base.
Yes.
When you apply the sand, be gentle with the PVA. You don't, you have less time than you have PVA in this case. So just pour it on. It sticks good. I'm going to put more PVA on the bottom, basically because it's on level with the table, and I would suspect there would be more, debris falls down, I suppose. So there'll simply be more sand and rubble at the base. I'm not going to use any bigger pieces to glue on, even though that would look really cool, because then the models might tip and fall over. And the whole point of this is to make it as playable as possible and still retaining a kind of cool look. So playable first, cool look later. My scenery is actually done, and I'm really happy with the result. There's a lot of it, and I haven't even used all my XPS foam. Especially I'm happy with the containers, the Coke bottles, that I think is going to do really well on the table once they're painted. It'll be interesting to see how the paint will fit on it. I've done some sandpaper and stuff, but that'll be interesting. The last bit is like when you make an army, when you paint a miniature. You got all the base colors in, you got the washes in, you got some of the highlights in, but what most important is the small details. Actually people see those. And on a terrain like this, which is all square and pretty straightforward, I thought I'll give it a little bit of extra. So that's why I stole the flag in the beginning. What I'll do is I'll make some pipes to keep in with my theme of some kind of gothic graveyard for industry or whatever you call it. The way I do it is quite simple. I cut off a piece like that. Then on the inside of a building, I decide that I want the pipe coming out here, dripping down the wall with the toxic goo. Just under, can you see it right there? I'll go in underneath here. I will punch a hole with my side cutter, like that. Just enough for this one to be squeezed through, like that. And then on the inside, I put a little bit of glue, like this. Taking the pipe out again, smearing it in glue, and out like this. And gluing it to the top like that. So when it comes out, it looks like a pipe that's really gooey, like this. And then once it's all dried and spray painted and painted, I'm gonna put PVA glue on. I've done it an example like here. I'm gonna put glue on in a bubble, and I'm just gonna tip it, let gravity do the rest. It runs through, so it looks like the toxic goo is coming out of the actual pipe. But I'll show you later once I've painted it.
And action.
Right now, the last bit I'm going to do is the razor wire. Well, actually, I have done the razor wire. Save time for everybody, but I'm going to show you how I did it. You've got difficult terrain, which the second the model touches or is on it, you get +1 save, which is kind of good, but you can be shot at, you can shoot out. So it's basically a piece of scenery that might slow you down or give you some extra cover. Now the razor wire is for, it doesn't mean anything to the game obviously, but it looks good, and it's my one and only chance of doing something creative here. So the razor wire comes free with the box, and the way I use it is I use a pencil like that, and I basically just make it round like this. Jonas, could you be a gentleman and grab me the side cutter, please?
No.
It's very simple. Now you have it, you've got razor wire like this. And you then attach it to however you want, and you put glue on, and you can, I use PVA glue on the actual XPS foam, and on the sticks I used super glue in order to make sure that it sticks. Now, you could argue whether you should put it on before or after you spray it. I put it on so it becomes just part of the base. I don't have a metal in my range now, obviously, normally I would, but to not sort of dilute this whole project and this experiment, I'm just going to put it on now and use the colors I have to see if I can make that work somehow. So I think that's going to look good, and that was really easy to make. Now I've come to the point where I'm supposed to be halfway. I've used half my foam, and I've made 4 3-story buildings and 6 normal containers and 2 large ones on top of each other. They're going to be horizontal once we start gaming, but now they've been glued. But I'm actually a lot longer than halfway with my table, because all I need now in order to make the WTC table is 2-story buildings. And I've still got half of my foam left, so now I can actually start really going to town doing some crazy shit. Oh no, I just have to do them square. But at least I've got a lot of foam left for future projects, and also if I want to do more of these ones in the future, or more difficult terrain, or however it's going to be. So I suppose it's a good thing. It really lasts a lot longer than I expected, these 7 sheets.
All right, day 1 is complete, and you can see that Bo was able to finish off all of the assembly for an entire table's worth of terrain. He just needs to let the glue set up before he begins priming and painting tomorrow. I'd love to know what you think in the comments. What would you have done differently? Was there anything that you learned in this tutorial, in this video? Is there anything that maybe you could send to us, some tips that we might take advantage of in future tutorials and future terrain crafting videos? But let's jump right back into day 2.
Right, we're at the warehouse now, ready for spray. We would have done it outside normally, but it is a little bit of snow, quite a lot of rain, and just nasty ass weather. So I start with the big surfaces and then I work my way in. So I suppose it's just another way of doing it, but I suppose the result will be the same somehow. What I'm most worried about now is whether the alcohol spray will actually not fit, but actually stick to the cans that I've used, because I've sort of betted on that horse for scenery. So if that doesn't work, then I'm kind of in the shits, because then I don't have enough terrain, and I will definitely lose this challenge, which I think I'm ahead, just by points really. So let's see. We'll start out. I'll not put too much on it so it won't run, because it's very smooth surface, so it'll be like this. Oh, it covers extremely well. Wow, this will work, guys. Definitely. Making sure I've got an even layer all over. Now I use a very dark spray, so I need to get into every recess because I need to dry brush on top of it. I don't know how long the spray will last, so I'm sticking to the big surfaces first, making sure they're all covered, and then I will go back and redo on here, if underneath, if I actually have the spray left in the can to do it. Now, I'm facing a challenge now. My idea about not spraying up underneath might pay out. I am down to the last bit of paint in the spray and I still miss something, but it'd be kind of cool if one spray could cover full 40k table. I know it's a big ask for a small bottle like this, but I've still got hopes that it might work, so we'll see. I am down to about 20% of the bottle and I miss probably 30% of the terrain, so fingers crossed. We are so close to ending this spray. I'm hoping. What I found out is that the cans actually take almost as much paint as Small Ruin, because of all the, you have to cover it twice, and you have all the different angles. It just takes up a lot more than I expected. We're almost there. So the terrain primer died on me. It's done quite a lot, I must admit, and I was almost there. One ruin and a little bit of the cans left, but unfortunately not enough. I did also make a very sort of ambitious table, but I suppose it was a bit too much to ask for a small can like this. But it did cover a shit ton, more than I expected. So I've got another can, which is good. Just gonna do the rest now. Now I've tested the base coat, the Ruin base, which follows in my set, and I have followed the same thought as Jonas, where I actually put more paint on than normal. You can see the contrast between the sprayed parts and the dry brush parts. This is dry brush 1. The next one is going to be ash grey for our range, which is slightly lighter. That will again get a wetter look, but not as much, obviously. And then the edging from Skeleton Bone, which moves nicely into this warmer colors, which will be edging all the way around. That will work well. What I did with the spray cans, actually, instead of painting them, or not spray cans, soda cans, was actually stippling them with the brush, and that worked very well. Very dry brush and then stippling it. I'll show you later how it's done. But this will give me an idea about how much I will put on the first one, which will then lead me to what they will look like in the end. So now I will take one piece and I will finish it from start to end, and then we can compare. Right. First step after spraying is dry brushing, and in each set is a base, and this base I will use called Ruin Base, very fitting I must admit. Here, and again when you dry brush, always remember it's a dry brush, not a wet brush as such, so putting lots of paints on the brush and then removing it again might seem contradictory, but it is the technique. And then, see if I can do it like this for you. You just move the brush back and forth, and remember the first step doesn't matter that it's not completely precise, it just needs to be well painted over. It is the base coat as such, and it will leave some of the small darker spray paint in between the crevices, so you see all the cracks already coming to life, which is amazing with this XPS foam board, that it's so modular and so easy to do. I mean, I was hitting this bastard with a rock, and still it turns out like I really spent a lot of time on it, just from a very quick dry brush. I don't know any other material who could do that. Again, just lob it on and dry it over. You can't put too much on now, because you will always be able to save it with a lighter paint. And as you can see, it's not exactly precision work I'm doing. Same goes for the sides. There's a bit of an odd angle for me to paint in, but I'm sure I'll manage. When you do it back and forth, you might get stripes in the paint, so after that you'll use some circular movements to sort of even the paint out, so it doesn't look like it's just one way I painted it, to give it more like a ruined feel. Smear on the paint, and then like this, and then to remove those stripes I just angle it out like this. Now this Ruin 2-story is base coated with the Ruin base. Right, next step is to give it some extra effects, and I use the ash grey from the Ruin set. After that. Now here I'm gonna do more of a dry brushing technique than before, which obviously just means that less paint on. Let's see how that pans out. Going to use it more on the edges. And instead of wiping it all over the board, I'm going to try to do it more with the actual texture. So instead of just moving it back and forth through the surface, I'm just going to point out more where I'm going to use or want the effects, as you can see. What's important here is that you won't see the brush strokes. So I'm going to see if I can somehow cancel that out, because I can see I have some here. By doing it the opposite way, but apart from that, it's dry brushing as per usual, just not so much on it. And as you can see, it slowly starts to take effect, pun intended. Here. Now, from the sprayed piece to the base coated piece to the highlighted piece, you can see the difference clearly here now. It really steps into character, all the modeling I've done on the XPS foam. And it shows now that the base coat I used to smear a lot of paint on the first base actually works out. Now comes the edging, and edging is where you really start to pick out the different highlights of the actual. That's like painting a miniature. This is where it gets the proper effects. If I make too much, like I've done in this area, for instance, I have a dark tone where I can simply just fill out and make some more depth to the actual scenery piece. But I'll do that at the latest. First, I'll just see, for this challenge, just make all my terrain like this, plus one edge, which I'll show you now. And then after, I'll go over the entire thing with the dark tone to make sure that it all looks coherent. The last edging, I will use the medium dry brush because it's more of a precision work actually. Again, dry brushing as much as possible. First, I'll have a really dry brush, and then for the edging, I'll use a different technique. I'll show you now. For in here, I will just move it slowly around like this for the effect to come forward. All the crest will get a little bit like this. Don't know whether you can see it on camera, but here in my little studio, it actually really fans out. We'll just do this little area here first because it's easier. And then for the edges, I will again apply paint to my brush a little bit soft, and then I'll just do the edging. Instead of painting like this, I'll actually paint it like that. So borderlining it a little bit like this. Will really make the terrain stand out. And here's a tip for you. If you do too much if you do like that too much, take your hand and just smear it. Instantly, you'll remove, before the paint is dry, you'll remove some of the effect. So if it's too much, you just use your hands. So nothing is lost at this level, right? Now I've used the medium dry brush and last dry brush, and the last bit I'm using is the effect brush. And I'm only using the effect brush on the actual bullet holes because they just need clear edge around to really stand out like this. And the dry brush is simply too big. Right. Now I've dry brushed everything in this one. I've edge highlighted it. I've done everything for the piece is more or less finished. Now we're gonna add the final details. I did put on some PVA glue. That's now gonna be into goo, and gonna put on some tufts, some static grass, and maybe a blood spatter somewhere where some unlucky guy has put his face up and he shouldn't have. And then this piece is finished and gonna go, and every other piece is hopefully gonna look similar to this one. First up is the goo. I've been waiting for this. I really hope this will work. Don't be shy with the goo, just pour it on. It's easier when you have a big pile of goo and then just form it. And remember, the disgusting slime is gloss, so once this dries up, it will look like it's wet and gooey. This is exactly as we want. Here. Yuck. Looks suitably nasty. And obviously it's coming out of the pipe, so we need to make sure you can see that that's where it's coming from. Like that. Next up is the inside. And we start up with the tufts. Just a few of them because they're going to last for the rest of the sceneries, I'm going to put 2 or 3 up very close like that. And then one down here where you can see it. That should be sufficient. Then we've got, it's getting sticky this, static grass, and I'm going to put the static grass mainly on the bottom because that's where the grass will grow, and I think the tufts will be the only green stuff I'll have up here. This one does not want to open. Alright. Gonna use it all anyway. Like this. Cool. A little bit PVA glue on it. What I usually do when I do it, I do it all in one go. So deciding where to put it. And when you apply stuff like this, like static grass or tufts or whatever, don't do them in equal, so 2 centimeters between each or so. Just do it a little bit random. And especially if you've made any cock-ups like I've just did here, where I've removed some of the sand, just put, you know, a tuft or something else on it. That'll cover up your mistakes and you look flawless. Well, to a certain extent. Now, adding on static grass. I always just tip it a little bit. It's not supposed to be erect like the tufts. It's just going to be green. And there you have it. I kind of promised to show how I would use the glistening blood, which I forgot obviously. The effect I will try to emulate here is there's been a burst of shrapnel and somebody got hit. So it could be on the corner where somebody is sprayed up, but there's already goo running down. So I think I'm going to use this corner, and then there's been a guy who's been hit around here, and I'm going to smear it out. So the point of impact would be around here. I'm going to hold it up so you can see, and then I'm just going to spray it out like this. Effects like these are obviously not important for the game piece in itself, but it's a creative process that's fun, and it's also something that'll add a lot of extra to your whole scenery. So you can see how he's been hit and blood spatters come out like that. Now I've got two mirror examples on what the scenery looked like and what it's going to look like. I've finished 4 pieces, and the mirror pieces are on the other side, just to show the extreme contrast there is by dry brushing these things. Obviously, a lot of the small details make these pieces stand out, like the oozing goo, like the, what do you call that, rapid fire that hit home once. And took out a lowly guardsman. From the inside as well, where you can actually see how all the different contrasts look. It's really, I'm amazed how sharp it actually looks in comparison to how much beating I gave it. So I'm really chuffed with the way it looks, and now it's just the rest of it, which is going to be the rest of the day, obviously. But I think if I can make it up to this standard, the table is really gonna look a lot better than I had anticipated. I would say it's skill, but I think it's almost painting itself with the dry brushing here. So before and after, I'm really satisfied with those results, and I especially think the containers works out well with a little bit of the goo that I bought, the disgusting slime. This one here, really done wonders on it, and ties it nicely together by filling out some gaps here with some extra toxic stuff. And it's just simple stippling technique, making this one darker than the rest of the scenery. We're gonna make it stand out, and so fast to paint. So really happy with this result so far. One of the things that was new about this project, apart from, well, basically everything, for me, was the cans. Now, I've been talking a lot about these bloody cans, and it's because I think they look really cool once they're done. I'm just going to quickly show you how I did it and how I achieved it as well. Obviously, I want these guys to be darker than the runes to sort of stand out. And I've also not sprayed them in the bottom, which means that whenever you put them on the table, you are never in doubt whether they're supposed to be like that or like that. It also saves me a lot of time painting them on the back side. What I do is now I've just been stippling a little bit with the ruin base, and now in order to give it some effects, I will concentrate my stippling around the holes in the actual can. Again, getting some paint on here. When you stipple, it's important that there's not a lot of paint on the brush, actually. If there's too much, so I could just check out here. I haven't done these yet, so if it's too much, I can see it now. It is. Right, we'll try. So basically, with gentle hand, just pressing the brush in around the places where you want it to be sort of highlighted. So it's not like a highlight in itself. It's more like, I don't know, right? Enlightenment? These things? No, that's the wrong word, I suppose. What it really does is that it just creates another effect than the actual concrete or whatever that's supposed to be. So it just stands out, and that's exactly what you want here. Make this stuff stand out, and if there's any bends in, you can highlight them or enhance them further by stippling it. Once you've stippled it like that, you take the extreme color, the edge, skeleton bone in this case, and on with the paint. I don't wash the brush in between because I don't want water in it, because then all of a sudden it'll pour out of the brush. So I want it dry as possible. Again, test whether it's still too much on it. Right, and then I try very carefully stipple around it. Holes are, so that's what you'll look at first. And again on this side. Right. It looks dirty. It looks like a worn out toxic container, which is supposed to be looking like. Or a can that's painted grey, but that's up to imagination, I suppose. For me, it looks something in between. Now we're going to add some goo. For that, I'm going to use the effects. Paint on the inside here, making sure I hit exactly so it runs the right way. Simulating some kind of damage and then some spill. I suppose in the 41st millennium they don't care too much about the environment, to be honest. Like that. The other side. And the container itself is now done. Now I have to do the sides, and I'll do those like that, like I've done all the ruins. So the end result will be like this. Og det kan være hvilken som helst, det kan være klippes ind på hvilken som helst tidspunkt nærmest. Bare stil du klar. Kigger jeg på tidspunkt. Oh shit, jeg skal ikke gøre vand her. Fuck. The last step, once everything is done, is the matte sealer. The matte sealer goes on every single piece of terrain I've made on the table because it's going to be handled quite a lot, and the wear and tear will eventually, wear it down a little bit. But with the sealer, it's just going to last a lot longer. I'm going to apply a fair amount. It is matte, so it's not going to ruin anything. Maybe just apart from the slime I've done, which might need a touch up afterwards. A distance of about 15-20 centimeters, and then just give it on the edges where you're going to place miniatures on the top. Obviously here, on the sides, neat as well, but especially where you're going to place your miniatures, that's going to take it up. So inside here, just going to turn this one around to show you what I mean. On the actual levels, up, and it's not a precision work. It's giving it so you can manhandle it without it being ruined too hard or too fast. So the sealer is definitely something I'd advise everybody. Once you make the scenery, use time on it. Why not make it last? It's like a miniature. If you seal it as well, it lasts a lot longer, and that's definitely something I'd advise. Finish line, done.
Done.
It's been a challenge as always when we battle. It's been two very different tasks.
Indeed.
Looking at the 40k competitive table, it's a bit smaller. Compressed the scenery a little bit more on your table. The 60 x 44 inches really makes it very claustrophobic to play these days. Obviously, assault armies and that kind of stuff have a field day. You can walk through ruins, do whatever you want to do. But the amount of scenery on it is what the WTC suggests. Not exactly their setup, but the amount of scenery. It just makes me look at it when I see it. All this was 1.5 box of
Foam.
Of foam, yeah. It was. And I think I managed to hit the toxic feel and a very standard 40k table, to be honest. I mean, you've seen these ruins 100 places, but there's a distinct difference to the ruins, I feel. It's the fact that it's XPS foam, and every single little hammer with the stone can just be seen very crisp and clearly.
I don't think you hammered them enough, really.
No.
No, but you're right. And I also think one of the things I need to highlight is that this is playable scenery. There's room for miniatures.
Yeah.
It works. It is for tournament, and it's brilliant. These
containers,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Honestly, you don't think it's a can of Coke.
Not anymore. No.
No.
The illusion is complete.
It's a silo of goo.
And I think that was one of the things that I was most chuffed about, is that really worked a lot better than I had even hoped for. And the spray just instantly covered, and it's very hard to get off now. It's really.
But I also think the in a way simple techniques that you use, it just shows what XPS foam, Big Rock, and Drybrush can do.
Yeah.
Because this looks amazing.
I'm a simple man, but I hit hard.
But
So,
it really is.
Yeah.
It's not difficult to do this.
No, it's not.
Difficult, and it was hard work because we had to do this much in just 2 days.
Yeah.
But to do that, it just requires a bit of aggression and a good dry brush.
Job's done.
And to be honest, everything in that kit, spray.
Everything's been utilized here. Apart from obviously the goo factor, but it could be anything. It could be oil. You could use the dark tone for oil if you want to. You can even take the dark tone on the actual scenery and just tone it even more down, make streamers so it looks like oil being running down. I mean, you don't have to buy that extra bit.
No.
It's just extra, really.
Yeah, in fact, you've actually gone for a lot of goo and not that much blood, but you could have done the opposite round if you wanted.
I could indeed, yes.
And that about does it. In 48 hours, Bo was able to build and paint an entire table worth of terrain for competitive play. I think he did a great job. I'd love to know what you think in the comments. What would you have done differently? What would you have done the same? What are you taking home when you're building your own terrain using the Gamemaster products? Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.